Hey there guys, welcome back to the worst channel on the internet. I'm Malorian, welcome back to Malorian Weekly, and what we're going to be talking about today is something a little bit more away from tactics. It's going to be more about the game we love, but unfortunately we're going to be focusing on the negative side of things today, and that's because we're going to be talking about Warmachine's biggest flaw. Now, as gamers, I think it's always natural that we're going to be looking for a chink in the armor. We're trying to look at the system, figure out what's worse, and if you go out there onto the internet, there are plenty of opinions out there of what the biggest flaw of Warmachine is. Now, I think if we look into this, as I scooch forward a little bit here, if you look into it, if you're to ask a person, there's a lot of different groupings that they might bring up for this. They might say, oh, well, the biggest flaw in Warmachine is this rule. It's this rule. It's the fact that, you know, the scenarios are all typically the same. You're fighting over rectangles and circles. Or maybe it's around this faction. Or maybe it's this caster. Or it's archons. Or something like that. Something around the rules of the game. And, I mean, we could talk about that later, but in my opinion, that is not the biggest flaw whatsoever. In fact, it's one of the strengths. Warmachine has an extremely strong rule set. If you look at some of the other rule sets out there, the fact that we can go to this game and play it at such a high level really kind of shows you how clean and how, you don't want to say perfect, but how perfect for tournament play these rule sets are. It's not something we're going in like, this rule doesn't really make a lot of sense. It always has to be kind of judged, called out, and, you know, everyone's using the same faction over and over and over again. You know, you might see some bias between a couple, but it's really good. We're in a really good spot here. You go to the WTC, you look at the numbers, and it's not like 80% of the field is playing one faction, and specifically these two casters. That's not that type of game we're in. So that's not the biggest flaw. So we can go and we can just move that aside. I think another big one that people will be looking at is just saying that, oh, well, it's going to be the models. They have really poor quality, lots of miscasts, lots of mispacks, and a mispack just being where they don't put the right bits even in the box, and that's really where the problem is. And I think then if you want to be looking at that one, well, the model quality is actually fairly good. You know, if you always want to look at Games Workshop as our golden standard, they have some beautiful models for sure. But I mean, wow, you got to look at some of these more recent models of Private Press where we are right now. Again, you can always be looking back at, you know, Games Workshop's earlier ones too, and they weren't always all that great. But you know, you look at these new Archons and they're beautiful. So I think for the how they look, you can't really say that. They might still have some ways to go, but that's not a big flaw of the game. We can, though, talk about things like the miscasts and the mispacks. So the miscasts are things where we had Old Witch 2 and 3, you know, the big, huge stand-up chicken thing with the old lady on top, and the one leg was always so such bad resin quality that the model just fall over. You saw that with some of the weapons and the wings where they're all bendy. But for the most part, again, if we're looking at that like resin quality, I almost never see big issues there. I mean, sure, the leg was the problem. That was like the classic. That's an awful one. For the wings, we talked about how they're bendy for the Archons, but even in those there, you know, I actually preferred that because now I know that these thin little wings won't break. They'd rather bend than snap. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. Along with that, we could be talking about how some models have a lot of flash on them. And again, some models are better than others, especially for the larger models. I find that whenever I do a colossal type huge base, I would bring like a saw with me because the amount of flashing and just like resin rods coming out of it take a lot of work to take off. And that's definitely not good, but it's not horrendous either. That's not going to be the big thing that kills this game. And then that probably gets to where the big thing is, that what kind of brought up this topic is like, well, is it mispacks? So when people get their models and they're just missing the weapon, they got 2 of this and none of what they need, they're missing a hip, and these things can be pretty bad and pretty to the point where it's just if you were to go to something, say, like the general Warmachine group, it's now banned from being talked about because so many people just go on there saying, look, I got this mispack. It is ridiculous. This is bullshit. You know, Privateer Press is just dropping the ball here. They're horrible people. And this is what's killing the game. And it's more so they want to ban these things just because, one, they're not really right, and we'll talk about that in a second, but two, just that it doesn't do anything, right? If I go out there and I say on there, oh yeah, I had a mispack, well, great. Did you go through? Did you actually let them know and tell them so they can give you the right part? And I think that's, I mean, we're going to get to that in a second, but Privateer Press, this is where they really shine. This is one of their strengths, that when they deal with these things, they are very happy to. They're not like, oh, well, I want to see your receipt and I want you to mail back that piece first and then I'm going to go and send you the replacement. No, they're just like, oh, you have a mispack? Okay, fill this in, the online form. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to send you a whole new model. The whole thing. There you go. And you have some people where, like, you're missing one minor part. They send you a complete replacement. You're like, oh, well, I can just proxy something and then I have two models. Okay, well, that's fantastic. So, you know, that response is really, really good. Now, with all that said, I think one of the things I want to start with this, though, is just to understand that the idea of mispacks being so bad is intrinsically false. And that's another problem here, like I was saying, is that the people to go out there and say, like, this is the number one thing, it's killing it, there's just mispacks everywhere, it's just not true. Now, when I say that, though, the real problem that I have is I have no empirical stats to give you to defend my opinion. What I have to give my opinion on are my experiences, the experiences around of the people around me, and as well on the Malorian page, I knew this was going to be biased both ways, where I asked, okay, tell me what your experiences are, just to get it more from around the world type thing. And of course, the people that got lots of mispacks, they're going to jump on there because they want their voice heard. The people that never have an issue ever, they're going to jump on and they're going to have their voices heard. But I think the very thing that's very clear is that you have these people that are maybe the exceptions to the rule where, oh man, they got these things and mispacks all over the place, but that is just not the norm. The big thing to understand here is that when we go in, and if I was to go to the store and buy 10 things from there, I might expect one thing to have a mispack. If I was to buy 100 things, maybe 10 or less things would be having a mispack. What I'm getting to, from what you'd be expecting, from what you've seen from your own purchases and the purchases from people around you, is that it's just isn't, it's not like 50% of things or the majority of things, like more than 50% of things have mispacks, right? We do see these things, say like with Nemo 4 and the Blockader, where it is one singular model that when it comes out, there's a very certain mispack that we saw with all of them. Like for Nemo, all of them were missing the flying bases. All of them were missing the actual bases. When it comes to the Blockader, oh, what even was that piece? I think it was like a shoulder, something there that was missing from all of them. I can't even remember anymore. But again, for all of them, it's the same mispack. So the main thing for that is that it's not like it's a sloppy, like, oh, person's drinking while packing type thing, puts in the wrong thing, and it's just random each time. It's just that where they're doing this, they're told to put in one of this, one of this, one of that, and that formula was wrong. And so those are going to be kind of throwing those numbers up. But in general, when you get these things, you're looking at a pretty good rate of quality. And what I think that's important to really stress is that if you really go into this saying mispacks are it and it's over 50% and it's just ridiculous, well, the problem is that you're taking yourself down a road that is going to be a no-win situation because your premise is wrong. And at the end of the day, where did you get? You didn't really learn anything. So I think it's good to understand that probably their quality is around 90-95% type thing, where if you pick up a box, it's just going to be completely fine. You know, the odds of you having a good box, really good and really there. But at the same time, if we were to compare that to something like not Privateer Press, Games Workshop, they're probably like 99.9 or maybe even like 99.99 type % quality. Now, something to keep in mind there is that quality takes money. Quality takes the resources to say, not only are we going to have a system put in place to ensure that the right pieces go in the box, but there's even like a second look to make sure that it's right after. And I think that's where we're going to start really getting to where Privateer Press's real flaw is that it's not really any of these things that are floating on the surface. It's not the rule set. It's not the way that the models look. It's not the quality of the models. It's not going to be the mispacks, the things that I think that, again, as players, these are the things that hurt us the most. So those are the things that we think are the biggest flaws. That's not that it. It's actually a lot deeper and a lot more worrying. Now, I think the big thing to think about is that when we think of Privateer Press, a lot of people probably think of Privateer Press as, well, it's this big company, right? I mean, I buy all these models from them. I get all these boxes. They sell things all around the world. This is a really big company. And at the end of the day, when you compare it to what big companies are, you know, obviously they're no Amazon. Obviously they're no Disney. So like these global empire type companies, it's not even close. They're not even around there at all. Well, let's compare them to something smaller then. Wizards of the Coast, people that make Magic, or Games Workshop, you know, again, model makers just like Privateer Press. Again, these are very large companies. Still, you know, comparing those to like Amazon and Disney, something like that, super, super small. But even in that marketplace where you look at like a Games Workshop compared to Privateer Press is small again. And I'm not saying this just to be trying to like, poke fun at Privateer Press. It's good for all of us to be keeping in mind how this company's actually being run. It's not this massive thing where you walk in and there's thousands or even hundreds of employees. This is a thing where there's a few dozen very passionate people who are actually keeping this thing alive. And, you know, times like, especially like now, that's even down even further. So what are we really dealing with? What are we really dealing with here? Well, what we really have then is this smaller company that's trying their best. Like, they love this game. That's the big thing. We talked about that. All the people working there are fantastic. They want this game to be amazing. They want it to be awesome. They want to have awesome times with everyone out there. They want to go to lock and loads. They want to see you. They want to drink with you. They want to have a meal with you. Just great people with a lot of passion for this. And luckily, like we said, one spot that they're getting bang on from perfection on this is the rule set, because the rule set through, you know, lessons learned over editions, things like the CID process, inner testing, stuff like that. That's something that you can very easily, with passion, be able to overcome. There's one thing that you can't overcome, though, and that's the actual structure and the effectiveness of your actual company. So if you have a small company, well, what are some of your limitations? Well, the very first one is your resources to be putting towards what you're trying to do. If I'm thinking that, okay, I only have so many people that need to be working on these various things, well, if I want to be putting time into developing new resources, like I want to be making this new rule set, well, the people trying to make up those rules and play testing them, that's something that to be dedicated to. Or maybe there's people trying to make the models, right? I got these people over there, they're working on trying to design these models, but what if I need to do anything else? What if I need to be doing things like distribution of the products and trying to get them out there? And I think when you look at the order of priorities, that's where this part's starting to fall through, right? If you have it so that, okay, we need to have our rules good, we're going to be focusing on that, then of course we have to be focusing on the future, what our new rules are, or even what are the current rules, we have to make any changes. And then there's the other business part too, where we have to actually be putting things in the box. Things have to go in here and they have to ship all around the world. And that's where things can get very, very tough. So again, let's look back to what we're talking about here. We have this box and we have to be trying to find someone who's going to be producing these for them if we're not doing them ourselves. And they do a lot of their stuff themselves there. It has to be packed in-house. We have to have the numbers to do that. We probably don't, I mean, again, in prioritization, you're not going to have those extra people to be doing those extra looks and eyes on there. And then after that, it has to get out everywhere as well. And so I think that's what we're going to be getting to see now, where there's the cracks in what Privateer Press has and what they're offering. One of the things that worked out very well is that when I was trying to do this, I was trying to get some comments and feedback from other gamers and other stores, and I thought I was just going to be able to get feedback from local stores, but I actually had one from abroad, and again, I don't want to say who they are or where they are because I don't want to get them in trouble or anything like that, but it was really interesting getting that insight, learning where for them, one of the biggest problems that they have is just communication. You know, them as a store, they want to buy things, you know, they want to buy things so they can sell it to others. And so you would think that for Privateer Press, this is one of their main things that they want to be dealing with. Like, oh, you want to be buying lots of models for a store? All right, I want to be talking to you. But they're dealing with so many other things that a lot of times this just isn't happening. So in order to do this, you need to have an account. And trying to set up this account took this person close to 2 years because it was taking so long, where you would think that, oh, well, this is a big company. There's got to be like one main person that, you know, you talk to and it's this rep, but that's just not really the case. You know, there's not like a team. There's not even like one person because they have a lot of overturn there in Privateer Press, right? This is not a place where people go to be making millions of dollars, right? You don't see the big names there going around in yachts, and they're not doing interviews with the people there in their mansions or anything like that. People are doing this as a labor of love, and at the end of the day, that doesn't pay the bills always. So you have a lot of overturn. So as people have kids, as people have opportunities that, look, if I want to have a family, to buy a house, to do these things, I have to go somewhere else, there's a lot of overturn and people going to other places. Or as we saw, you know, just where people are moving on to other companies and stuff like that. And so what really happens in the background is as stores are trying to deal with Privateer Press and arrange these things to be getting models, well, those things can be falling through the cracks. And again, they try their best, right? We're seeing all these beautiful things now, whereas people are trying to order things through the pandemic. They're getting personal notes, they're getting extra things thrown in, stuff like that. I know other staff people will jump in wherever they can, and even though it's not really their job, they're trying to help out where they are. Again, I want to stress that the people working at Privateer Press are amazing people, really trying to do their best, but it's really a skeleton crew trying to do everything. So what's really ending up then is that we're having these people wanting to order the models that can't really get them in because they can't make their accounts as well. I mean, we've heard of things like if you're in Australia, if you're in the UK, good luck trying to get some models. And I mean, I think that's really where you got to see like, okay, what's really the problem here? These rules where maybe like these couple of models are a little bit too strong. Is it the fact that these beautiful angels aren't as beautiful as the GW angels? Is it, you know, that you get a little bit of flash on there, or like the rare time you're missing a piece that they'll replace as fast as they can? Well, no, that's not really the issue at all. The big issue that's going to be the flaw to Privateer Press, the flaw to Warmachine. If one thing's going to be killing Warmachine, it's not going to be the gameplay. It's going to be the fact that models can't get out there. The fact that in big chunks of the world, it's extremely hard to be trying to get models. Even here locally, if everything was perfect and everything was here, well, there's like 30 turtles, I'm sure, that'd be bought up in no time just from my little area here. But unfortunately, they just can't get them. They're sold out everywhere. There's just, you can't get these things. And so all of a sudden, when you have a game where, you know, you have big waves where this is the big thing in the meta and I need this to combat it, you need to be having those pieces. And that's great for a Privateer Press because they want you buying these things. But if you're stuck in a world where you can't order these things, you can't get these things, well, not only are you disenfranchised with the game where like, oh, now it's almost like a pay to win type thing. You can feel like, again, it's all these things you're feeling that's not really the issue, right? Like, oh, well, I'm just going to lose now because this person has this and I don't. Or maybe it's even just a more simple thing where I want to get into this game. I'm a new player. I want to be getting whatever I can, but they can't do this because Well, let's compare it again to something like a Games Workshop. Games Workshop have actual stores. They'll hold large amounts of the products. You can walk in there and be like, I want to buy this army. And they'll be like, yep, it's over there. And there's some stores out there that will do that with Privateer Press, but there's no dedicated Privateer Press stores. Because why? Because they're not that big. And I would love that they would be getting that big, but that's not the situation. So, okay, what are you getting at, Malorian? You've been rambling on for 20 minutes now. What is the point of this entire rant that you're giving me today? Well, I think the biggest thing that I want to be getting across to you today is that when you are looking to be negative with Privateer Press, I want you to, now that you've been through this, be intellectually honest and understanding what the real issues actually are. Don't go on there and say that, oh, well, Infernals are broken and they're destroying the game. No, they're not. When you look, it's not all Infernals winning the everything all the time. That's not the problem. Oh, the models are so crummy. They're so garbagey. No, that's not it. Oh, it's all the mispacks. Everything has mispacks. No, that's not it. The real problem is going to be the fact that we're dealing with a small company with a skeleton crew that's trying to do their best to solve everything, and they just can't get there. Again, when I was talking to that store owner, one of the things that we agreed would be a great thing to move on to is sprues, where it's not like it's bit inside of a plastic case. Like, here's a good example. You know, I guess blisters are always going to be like that. But even for your larger kits, sprues make it so that, one, it eliminates a lot of your casting issues, and two, it's really easy to make sure everything's packed. You know, if I have a large box that has like 30 different pieces, you know, it's a lot easier to make a singular mistake there. Whereas it's like, oh, what do I put in this box? These 2 or these 3 sprues and then a base? Done. Super easy. But what does it take to get there? It takes money. And Privateer Press already tried this when it came to things like with the Reliance kit. That came out as a sprue, and people hated it. And the reason why people hated it is because the way it was designed, mold lines were in the wrong spot, so they had mold lines running down right in the clear view of whoever's trying to play with them. There was too many bits making the same thing. And again, what did that negativity really accomplish? That negativity came out saying, this is garbage, and they just stopped doing it. So again, I don't work for Privateer Press. There could have been more reasons why they looked into that and then decided not to. But I think the real answer here is that if people were looking at what the real issues are and where this company needs to go to, that's what they actually needed to do. They just, now that we're doing more like AutoCAD type of design work, you can be designing them better to be hiding those mold lines. That's an easy thing. The idea that, oh, these pieces, instead of having it so that like your little turbine in the back is going to be like 6, 7, 8 pieces, it could be like 1 or 2. You know, those things you could have worked to. But I think there's just such a negative outcry against it that they just ditched it. And I mean, I think it's very telling that if you look at Games Workshop, that's what they use. So again, I think us as end users, we need to stop. And if something pokes us because like, oh, I got a box and it had 1 miscast, or, oh, there's a little bit of flash on there, or I just lost to Infernals because I don't understand how they work. We have to realize that that's not the real problem. And the real problem in the back is just the fact that we're dealing with this small crew that loves it. And if we're going to turn this into a larger game, what do we need to do? We need to give them honest feedback, and you don't complain and say like, well, you killed it because you got rid of the press gang. Hell, I'm no longer part of the press gang, and I press gang harder than I ever have before. I go out there, I try and tell people why this game is awesome, why I love it, and then the more people that are playing that game, the more money that's coming into Privateer Press. They can now use that money to be developing these things and moving on to these areas where they're going to be larger, like Games Workshop, and all of a sudden that largest flaw, that's what's going to be handling it for it. So what's going to be the real thing? How are you as a player going to be dealing with these flaws, this biggest flaw that could be killing the game you love? positivity, not focusing that negativity on the things that are incorrect and also not going to help things, but focusing that positivity so that people play this game, people realize, oh yeah, this is a really awesome game with really awesome models. Let's start having an awesome time playing with them. And then it just all works together so that now all of a sudden Privateer Press can get bigger and they can have the resources to do the things that they want to do. They're not doing these things because they're evil or idiotic or anything like that. They're just understaffed. They're just a small company and they want to get bigger. So let's just help each other out. So this turned out to be a big 25-minute long rant. I hope it was eye-opening for you. I'm sure there's going to be lots of downvotes of like, oh, Malorian, you're just a Warmachine fanboy. But you know what? I am a Warmachine fanboy. I do love this game. That's why I'm a press ganger, even in a world where there's no press gang. And that's because it's just a great game. You know, I've played a lot of games out there, and this one is fantastic. And I would hate to see that one flaw of it falling away just because we're all focused on the wrong things. So there you go. There you have it. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have any comments, if you want to say that Malorian, you're an idiot, you know, put that down below. If you have anything else you want to discuss, put that down below because I'd love to talk about that too. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.